The maid's trembling voice echoed through the candle-lit hall of the ancient vampire castle. Sir, the girl lived with me in the orphanage. Her breath broke, her eyes filled with uncontrollable tears. The girl in this portrait, she was like my little sister. Vladimir Nightbane, the last royal vampire, froze where he stood. For centuries, nothing had been able to shock him, neither death, nor war, nor betrayal. But this single sentence pierced deeper than any stake could. He turned slowly toward the maid, his crimson eyes widening as if his undead heart had begun beating again. You know her? His voice, usually cold as winter stone, cracked. The maid, Eleanor, nodded frantically, her hands clutching her apron. I don't just know her, my lord. She grew up beside me. I helped raise her. I never imagined she belonged to this castle in any way. Vladimir stepped closer to the portrait, his black cape brushing the marble floor. There she was. The girl he had been searching for. The girl who vanished from his world in a single crimson dawn. The only human who had ever made a vampire feel alive again. Her soft eyes, her gentle smile, her hair that always danced with the wind. Lyra, his Lyra. The maid swallowed. My lord. She disappeared from the orphanage many years ago. We thought she ran away, but now I see this painting, and it means she knew you? Or you knew her? Vladimir's hand rose, almost trembling, as he touched the frame. I knew her, he whispered. More than she ever knew. A storm rumbled outside the towering castle walls, lightning illuminating the portrait like a relic of fate. Eleanor hesitated. My lord, you look as if you've been searching for her. Vladimir closed his eyes. I have searched for her for 200 years. The maid gasped. He opened his eyes again, eyes filled not with monstrous hunger, but with centuries of love, loss, and longing. Eleanor, he said softly, sit down. You deserve to know everything, and I need to speak her name out loud again. The maid obeyed, heart pounding. Vladimir turned away from the portrait, toward the roaring fireplace. Her story begins long before she was brought to your orphanage, long before she lost her memories, long before fate separated us. His voice softened, so uncharacteristically gentle for a creature of night. Let me tell you who Lyra truly was, and why I have never stopped looking for her. Eleanor nodded, wiping her tears. Please, my lord. I want to know everything. Vladimir stared into the flames, and the past came rushing back like a bleeding wound finally opened. Flashback 200 years ago. The kingdom of Arendelle lived in superstition, fearing the forests after nightfall. Rumors of a vampire protector spread through the villages, but no one believed it. No one except one girl, Lyra. The first time Vladimir saw her, she was kneeling beside an injured baby fox in the woods, whispering comfort while wolves circled nearby. He watched from the shadows, hidden among ancient trees, silently determined to keep her safe. A wolf sprang forward, Lyra gasped, and in that heartbeat, Vladimir moved faster than lightning, quieter than fog. His claws slashed the air, sending the wolf scrambling away. The others fled, sensing a predator older than their bloodline. Lyra looked up only to see a dark silhouette fading into the woods. Thank you, she whispered, unaware he could hear every word. From that day on, he watched her, every night, every breath, every danger. His duty was never meant to become love. A vampire had no right to love a human. But every time she smiled at the moon, his cold heart cracked. Every time she spoke to the stars, he wished he could stand beside her. He protected her from bandits, from beasts, from storms, from the cruel world that broke fragile souls. But he never revealed himself. His love remained silent, one-sided, hidden in the darkness, until the night she finally saw him. Back to present, the maid listened in stunned silence as Vladimir continued. She was everything the world was not kind, pure, and then she vanished. One night, she simply disappeared into thin air. Eleanor's face paled. We found her at the orphanage doorstep that same night, unconscious, cold, with no memory of her past. The vampire's eyes flared. So she truly lost everything. Eleanor nodded. We felt she was abandoned. A tremor went through Vladimir's voice, raw, ancient pain resurfacing. I waited for her for years. I searched for her in every kingdom. I guarded the forest for a century, hoping she would someday return, but she never did. The maid looked at the portrait once more. Sir, if you loved her, then why did she leave you? Why did she end up at an orphanage? Vladimir exhaled deeply. That is the part of the story I have never shared with anyone. He turned toward her, his cape fluttering with the rising wind from the open balcony. Because the night she vanished, I was not the only one searching for her. The maid's breath caught. Vladimir's eyes glowed like embers, and the creature who took her still lives. The flames crackled softly as the maid Eleanor leaned forward, unable to blink, afraid that even a breath might break the fragile silence. Vladimir stood before the balcony, the wind tugging at his raven-black hair, his crimson eyes soft with an ache that had lived inside him for 2 centuries. Eleanor, he began, his voice low, I told you how I protected her. But I didn't tell you what haunted the forests, or why Lyra was never meant to walk alone after sunset. The maid clutched her apron. Was it another vampire? He shook his head slowly. No, worse. Flashback, the night of the Crimson Star. The kingdom sky was unusually bright, that night streaked by a blood-red star that rarely appeared except during supernatural shifts. Whenever that star rose, boundaries between worlds thinned. Lyra stood at the lake's edge, barefoot, hugging her cloak around her as wind whipped through the trees. She sensed him before she saw him. Are you there? She whispered softly into the darkness. Vladimir stepped from the shadows. She gasped lightly, not in fear, but awe. His tall, regal form emerged, illuminated by moonlight. His dark coat fluttered behind him, and his eyes, though crimson, softened when they met hers. Lyra smiled. You came. Always, he said, a whisper of truth he couldn't hide. They had been meeting like this for nearly a year now, ever since the night she insisted on seeing the face of her mysterious protector. She wasn't afraid of him, not even when she learned what he truly was. A vampire. But to her, he was the one who saved her life a dozen times over. They walked beside the lake, moonlight scattering across the water. You seem troubled, Vladimir murmured, studying her delicate expression. Lyra bit her lip, her voice fragile. I had a nightmare. What kind? She hesitated, then whispered, a shadow with no body. Calling my name. A chill ran through him. Eleanor never told me this, the maid whispered from the present-day castle, tears forming again. Back in the flashback, the air grew colder. Vladimir stepped protectively in front of Lyra. Describe it, he urged quietly. It didn't look human, she murmured. Just eyes, burning eyes. And it kept whispering that I belonged to it. Vladimir stiffened. He knew that creature, a shade and ancient spirit that fed on memories and souls. It rarely took interest in a living person unless that person carried something powerful within their blood. And Lyra was not just any human. She carried a hidden lineage, one she wasn't aware of, a lineage the shades hunted for centuries. Vladimir reached out, brushing a lock of hair from her face. You're safe, he whispered. As long as I breathe, no shadow will touch you. Lyra looked up at him with a trust so complete it made his dead heart ache. Why do you do so much for me? She asked softly. He turned away, unable to answer truthfully. Because I love you. Because your smile revives me. Because if anything ever hurt you, I would burn down worlds to avenge you. Instead, he whispered, because the night is dangerous for one so gentle. Lyra stepped closer. And if I told you, I'm not afraid of the night anymore, she asked, his breath caught. You should be, he said, barely above a whisper. But her eyes shone with warmth. Not when you're in it. Something inside him cracked, painfully, beautifully. A moment felt eternal, until the forest suddenly went silent. Birds stopped singing. Wolves stopped howling. Even the breeze froze in place. Vladimir instantly pulled Lyra behind him. The lake rippled unnaturally, as if disturbed by an unseen force. A low, eerie whisper drifted across the water. Lyra. Lyra gasped. Vladimir bared his fangs, his eyes blazing. The shade materialized above the lake, a swirling form of smoke and shadow with two burning silver eyes. You cannot hide her, vampire, it hissed. She belongs to the forgotten bloodline. She is mine, Vladimir snarled. She will never belong to you. The shade screeched, the air quivering as it lunged. Vladimir moved instantly, pushing Lyra back and launching himself at the creature, striking with supernatural force. His claws tore through the shadowed form, but the shade simply reformed with a whispering laugh. Lyra's panic rose. Vladimir, run! He shouted. I won't leave you. You must. The trees exploded with darkness as the shade expanded, swirling around Lyra like a misty serpent. Vladimir roared, leaping toward her, but the shade reached her first. Lyra's scream tore through the night as shadows enveloped her body, lifting her from the ground. Vladimir's strike landed too late, and in a heartbeat, she vanished. No trace. No sound, no scent, only the faint echo of the shade's whisper. When she wakes, she will forget you. Present the castle, Eleanor covered her mouth, tears spilling. My lord, I never knew. She just appeared at the orphanage doorstep, unconscious, cold. We thought she was abandoned. Vladimir's jaw tightened. Shades feed not on flesh, but on memories. It must have drained her past. Erased everything she was. Eleanor wiped her eyes. She remembered nothing. Not even her name. We gave her one. What name? Vladimir asked softly. Lyra, the maid whispered. We named her that because it sounded gentle. For a moment, Vladimir closed his eyes, fighting the weight of fate. Eleanor, he said, turning toward her slowly. You said she lived with you. Then where is she now? Eleanor's lips trembled. That's the part you won't like? My lord. Vladimir's eyes sharpened. Tell me. The maid swallowed hard. She left the orphanage months ago. She said she felt someone calling her, like a voice from far away. She wanted to find out who she used to be. Vladimir's heartbeat, dead for centuries, seemed to echo. Where did she go? He whispered. Eleanor's tears fell again. She went into the same forest where she vanished all those years ago. Silence crushed the room. Then Vladimir's eyes burned brighter than fire. Eleanor, he said with ancient fury rising in his voice, prepare the horses. Tonight we ride.
The castle corridors trembled under Vladimir's urgency as Eleanor practically ran behind him, trying to match his stride as he swept through the ancient halls like a rising storm. My lord, she gasped. The forest at night it's cursed now. People say no one who enters returns. Vladimir's voice was cold steel wrapped in centuries of grief as he replied, Then we shall break that curse tonight, fastening the clasp of his obsidian cloak, the Nightbane emblem glinting faintly while castle servants pressed against the walls, bowing in fearful respect, never having seen their master in such a state. Eleanor hesitated and whispered, Will we find her alive? Vladimir paused, turned slowly, and with eyes glowing with pain and determination, said, Lyra is more alive than I will ever be, and I will find her. Dead or undead, the world will not keep her from me. The gates of Nightbane Castle opened with a valley shaking, grown as two black horses. Waited one massive, and armored for the other, smaller and trembling for Eleanor yet. He lifted her onto his horse, insisting she ride with him because the forest was no place for mortals alone. As the horse bolted forward and wind tore across Eleanor's cheeks, Vladimir observed the blood moon rising, explaining that it meant the border between realms was thin, and that the shade that took Lyra might walk again. When Eleanor asked if Lyra could be calling for him, he whispered that she always called to him, even when she forgot his name. His mind drifted to a memory by the lake where Lyra teased him about hiding from the world and gently touched his chest, surprised by his still heart, asking
if it hurt, and he admitted he felt no pain anymore, though she made him wish to be human again.
She brushed his cheek and whispered that maybe he already was, moments before fate stole her away.
In the present, the horse slowed as the twisted, skeletal trees of the cursed forest loomed. Fog crawled around them and whispers drifted through the darkness.
Vladimir warned Eleanor not to speak. Follow lights or answer voices because the forest mimicked what one missed most.
And when she asked what it mimicked for him, he answered simply, her. When Eleanor wondered why the shade took, Lyra Vladimir revealed that she came from a bloodline capable of opening pathways between worlds. Bloodline. The shades would destroy kingdoms to possess, and admitted he had sworn to protect her with his eternal life. A whisper then brushed the air. Vladimir, followed by another, help me, Lyra's voice, and Eleanor cried out as Vladimir's own voice broke with centuries of buried emotion. A shadow then stretched across the ground as the forest dimmed and a tall, smoke-dripping figure with silver eyes emerged. The shade. Eleanor screamed while Vladimir's fangs extended and his eyes blazed crimson as he roared, "You stole her from me." But the shade replied that he could not claim what was never his. Vladimir stepped forward, power shaking the earth, declaring that she was his to protect.
And the shade whispered, "Then protect her now," as the forest floor split open and shadows erupted in a vortex.
Eleanor fell with a scream into the darkness, and Vladimir leapt after her into the very realm where Lyra had vanished centuries ago. The fall through darkness felt endless as wind roared around Vladimir, though there was no Aaron Lee. The crushing pressure of a world never meant for the living, with shadows twisting like serpents and brushing against his skin while whispering memories that weren't his. Eleanor screamed somewhere above him, her voice swallowed by the black vortex, and Vladimir stretched his arm upward, claws slicing through shadow as he shouted, "Eleanor," catching her wrist just before she slipped deeper into the void, growling, "I've got you," even as the abyss tried to tear them apart. Then, just as the shadows were about to consume them, light exploded beneath them and the fall ended abruptly.
Vladimir landed on his feet, pulling Eleanor safely against him as they stumbled onto a cracked glass surface floating in an endless, starless sky. And when Eleanor gasped and asked, "My lord, where are we?" he surveyed the realm with fury and dread, answering the shade's world. "The realm of forgotten echoes." Eleanor shivered that it was cold and empty, and Vladimir explained that it fed on lost memories built from the minds of those it stole every fragment of fear, sorrow, and confusion shaping the world. When she asked if that meant Lyra's memories, he didn't answer.
and the ground shivered as cracked glass rearranged into a jagged mirror path in which memories flickered. A girl's laughter, a silver lake, a vampire's shadow guarding her, a tear-stained smile making Eleanor gasp that these were Lyra's memories. While Vladimir stepped toward a mirror showing Lyra braiding wildflowers and whispering, "Why does he never tell me how he feels?" causing him to freeze in unbearable agony as Eleanor softly observed that Lyra cared for him. He turned away, insisting that it didn't matter now, only finding her before the shade devoured her. As they walked the shifting path of echoes, shards revealed Lyra crying after villagers mocked her dreams, wandering the woods, whispering Vladimir's name, and touching the lake's surface, as though expecting someone to rise.
Making Eleanor tearfully suggest she'd always been searching maybe for him while. Vladimir murmured,
"Lyra, forgive me." They reached a towering bone-on shadow gate, pulsing like a heartbeat. The threshold, the heart of the Shade's realm, Vladimir said. But before he could open it, it ripped apart from inside, and a cold wind burst forth, along with a trembling, familiar voice calling. Eleanor gasped that it was her, and Vladimir turned to see Lyra standing ghost-like, shimmering with fractured memories, her hair drifting as if underwater and her eyes glowing faintly with half-recognition, looking exactly as she did in the portrait and the night she went. Vladimir whispered her name. As she murmured, she followed his warm, familiar voice, and when he asked if she remembered him, she said her heart knew him, even if her mind didn't. But before he could reach her, pain tore across her face as she gasped that something dark was pulling her back. Vladimir grabbed her shoulders, promising he wouldn't let it take her, and when she whispered she was scared, he assured her she was safe. But the realm trembled violently as shadows shot upward like black spears, nearly striking Eleanor before Vladimir pushed Lyra behind him, snarling that the realm knew they found her. The Shade's whispering storm of voices declared, "She belongs to me," as twisted silhouettes rose from Lyra's stolen fears, and Vladimir's eyes blazed crimson as he stepped forward, the air vibrating with ancient power while Eleanor watched in awe and asked what he was doing. He extended his hand and whispered, "I'm taking back what is mine," unleashing a blast of energy that cracked the realm. Shattered shadows screamed the sky apart and collapsed the gate, but as the darkness dissolved, Lyra fell trembling, crying that something was missing, that the Shade had taken an important memory without which she couldn't leave. Vladimir knew instantly. Her most precious memory, the night she told him she loved him, and when Eleanor gasped and Lyra repeated in confusion, "Loved you," Vladimir confessed softly that she had, before everything was torn away, and that the stolen memory was the key to her soul, held captive by the Shade. Lyra trembled, but whispered they must get it back, and Vladimir lifted her in his arms, eyes blazing like bloodfire as he vowed, "We will," commanding Eleanor to stay close, because the Shade was waiting. As the realm twisted into a labyrinth of darkness, with the creature at its center pulsing like a living nightmare, Vladimir's fangs extended and his voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "The world. I end this." The realm darkened as Vladimir carried Lyra through the shifting labyrinth of shadows, the glass-like ground cracking beneath each step and echoing the tension, twisting the very air around them, while Eleanor walked close behind, trembling but refusing to fall back as she asked, "My lord, is this place alive?" And Vladimir replied, "Yes, alive and hungry," scanning every shifting corner. Lyra's weak voice drifted, saying she felt pieces of herself missing, half here and half somewhere else, and Vladimir tightened his grip around her, explaining that the shade fed on memories and kept her most precious one, her love, as its anchor, without which she couldn't return to the human world. Lyra looked up at him in confusion about her love for him, and he admitted he had never told her how he felt. That she had been the one who spoke first that night, prompting Eleanor to whisper that must be the memory it stole. Lyra shakily brushed the collar of his cloak, asking what she had said, and Vladimir answered gently that she had waited all her life to meet someone who made the darkness feel warm, that whether his heart beat or not, it had already chosen her, leaving Eleanor in tears as Lyra stared at Vladimir with instinctive recognition and an ancient bond. Then the ground rumbled, the realm shifting like a living organism, and a massive shadow wall rose in the distance, leading them toward the center and the memory. The labyrinth opened into a colossal chamber of suspended mirrors and swirling black mist, each mirror flickering with stolen memories, but at the center one glowed pale gold, drawing Lyra toward it as Vladimir confirmed it was her memory the night. She confessed just as the chamber trembled, and shadows dripped from above, fog twisting into limbs and silver eyes opening all around. Eleanor panicked, but Vladimir set Lyra beside the glowing mirror and assured her she was safe with him as dozens of shadow figures rose, and the shade materialized, a towering figure of endless darkness and silver, eyes accusing him of trespassing. Vladimir snarled that it had stolen her memory, the shade insisting she was its to take, and Vladimir declaring it had taken what she'd gave freely, that it had no claim, while the shade mocked love as foolish, doomed for mortals and impossible for immortals. But
Vladimir stepped forward, vowing he had waited 200 years, and that the creature couldn't imagine such love.
the shade hissed to watch it die.
As shadows lunged like wolves and Vladimir moved faster than lightning, shattering the first wave into smoke, defending
Eleanor, and commanding her to stay behind him, as Lyra pressed her hands to the glowing mirror and sensed something calling. When the shade attacked her, Vladimir caught the tendril of darkness and tore it apart with a roar that cracked the chamber floor, declaring the end as he charged into the storm of black smoke, fangs bared and claws burning with crimson energy, each strike sending shockwaves through the realm while shards of memories rained down. Eleanor cried that he was destroying everything, but Lyra pressed harder to the glass, saying if she got her memory back, the realm would weaken. Inside the mirror, her reflection awakened at the moonlit lake, whispering, "I love him," the words echoing through the chamber and freezing Vladimir mid-battle, as the memory continued that even if he never felt the same, her heart had belonged to him since he saved her. The shade screamed, "No, that is mine," and hurled a massive shadow at the mirror. But Vladimir threw himself into its path and was blasted into the far wall as Lyra screamed his name, "Eleanor," shrieking for her lord. Smoke rose from Vladimir as he forced his head up and rasped Lyra. "Complete it," and she pressed both hands to the mirror, crying that she remembered what she felt, who she loved, what she lost. As the mirror glowed brighter, her reflection said its final words, I love him. In this life, and every life after it, before light exploded, and the mirror shattered into golden fireflies swirling around her, as her lost memory returned. Lyra gasped that she remembered everything, and Vladimir closed his eyes as relief, agony, and love crashed through him. But the shade screamed as its body fractured the realm, collapsing the ground, splitting in shadows, tearing apart while light pierced every crack. Vladimir forced himself up, commanding Eleanor to get to Lyra, and Lyra reached toward him in fear, pleading for him to come. He stepped forward just as the shade lunged with a monstrous arm of darkness to drag her back.
And Vladimir roared, leaping in front of her, catching the shade's final strike before the world erupted.
Light swallowed everything, white, blinding, silent. The explosive force threw Eleanor backward, sent Lyra tumbling across the broken ground, and hurled Vladimir straight into the collapsing wall of the realm. As shards of dying shadows scattered like ash. When the light finally dimmed, the world was eerily still. Lyra pushed herself up, coughing, trembling, whispering. Vladimir, as terror filled her voice while the chamber lay in ruins of shattered mirrors, swirling embers, and fading shadows. Nor limped to her side, asking if they'd won. But Lyra didn't answer, scanning the devastation in panic before shouting Vladimir's name again. There, half buried under fallen black crystal, a dark figure lay.
Lyra ran to him, dropping to her knees with tears spilling as she found him barely conscious, paler than any vampire should be.
Dark energy smoking from his wounds, cloak torn and armor cracked. Eleanor gasped behind her as Lyra cupped his cheek, begging him to stay with her, and he breathed her name faintly. She whispered that she remembered everything: the lake, the nights he watched over her, the protection she never understood, and he smiled weakly, saying her memory had returned. She told him she regained it because he told her to, because he stayed, even when she forgot him. And his trembling fingers touched her cheek as he whispered her heart had remembered him long before her mind did. Above them the realm thundered as shadows split apart and cracks opened, the entire world collapsing. Eleanor cried that they had to leave or die, but Lyra refused, clinging to Vladimir as he rasped that the realm drained his power and he couldn't recover here. Eleanor urged her again, and Lyra demanded to know how they could escape. Vladimir struggled to point toward the shades. Shadow remains. Explaining the shade's heart had to be destroyed to open the portal. Lyra looked to the room's center where a pulsating black core floated, beating like a diseased heart with shadows dripping like ink, making Eleanor pale at the thought of destroying it. Vladimir said shades were beyond mortal touch and required a bond stronger than memory, their bond restored by her returned memory, telling her to call her power.
Lyra insisted
She was human, but Vladimir told her she carried a bloodline bridging worlds.
The reason the shade wanted her. As the chamber shook violently, Lyra stood, Eleanor grabbing her hand. But Lyra's voice turned steel as she refused to run or fear anymore. She stepped toward the pulsing heart, each step like walking through hurricanes of screams and memories while shadows tried to drag her down. But the golden glow of her restored memory flickered around her like a shield. She reached the heart and placed her hands on it as darkness screamed and the heart thrashed, cold ripping through her veins, while she held on, whispering that she remembered loving him. The heart cracked, shrieking louder as Lyra pressed harder, tears streaming, whispering that she chose him. Light erupted from her palms, brilliant and gold, and the heart shattered in a deafening shockwave that tore through the realm as the chamber split open to reveal a swirling portal of white light. Eleanor screamed for her to come back as Lyra collapsed, gasping, and Vladimir forced himself up, dragging his wounded body to scoop her into his arms as storm-like winds erupted around them. Lyra asked weakly if she had done it, and he pressed his forehead to hers, saying she saved them. The ground lurched violently as Eleanor cried for them to go, and Vladimir lifted Lyra, ignoring the burning darkness in his wounds, sprinting toward the portal with supernatural speed as the realm crumbled, shadows crashing like dying stars. As the portal swallowed them, Lyra clung weakly to his cloak, whispering, "Don't let go," and he held her tighter, murmuring, "I haven't let go in 200 years." As light consumed them and the realm of forgotten echoes collapsed into nothing, a cold wind swept over the cliffside as the blinding portal sputtered shut behind them, Lyra gasping and blinking hard as her body trembled from exhaustion, realizing they were back, not in the castle but on the outskirts of the ancient forest beneath a bruised twilight sky, where pines swayed with whispering shadows and snow dusted the ground like powdered moonlight. Eleanor collapsed to her knees, panting that they'd made it, while Lyra tried to sit up but remained in Vladimir's arms, his arms only. Now noticing how violently he was shaking, she whispered his name, brushing his cheek, but he didn't respond, and when she sat up slightly, she froze, seeing his shirt soaked with dark, thick blood, not shadow wounds, but real blood. Too much blood, the kind vampires shouldn't shed unless something was terribly wrong. She begged him to look at her until he finally opened his eyes, the crimson fading to a dull wine, and she cried to Eleanor that they had to get him to the castle. Eleanor sprang up, agreeing, but Vladimir's hand caught Lyra's wrist, warning her not to move him because the shade's wound burned. Lyra tried to argue that he was bleeding, but Vladimir corrected her with a weak laugh, saying it wasn't tea blood but life force, leaving Eleanor pale as she whispered to him, "My lord," while Lyra stared at the dark red on her fingers in disbelief. She protested that vampires were nearly immortal, and he whispered, nearly, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, admitting he'd apparently found the exception. Lyra asked why he hadn't told her, and he replied that if he had, she wouldn't have stepped into the realm. She insisted she would have, and he whispered he didn't want her to. The softness and regret in his voice making her throat tighten as Eleanor begged them to save this for later because he needed help. But Lyra realized he wouldn't survive being carried to the castle and demanded to know how to heal a wound like this, begging Eleanor for answers. Until Eleanor finally whispered that life force wounds could only be healed by the return of what was taken. Confused, Lyra demanded clarification, and Eleanor explained that since the shade took Vladimir's life force and Lyra destroyed the shade, the power holding Vladimir's essence now resided inside her. Lyra felt warmth glowing under her skin as she stared at her hands, realizing she held the missing part of him, and Vladimir didn't deny it. He was fading, breathing shallowly, lashes trembling, lips drained of color, so she demanded to know how to save him. Eleanor answered that it required a bond, a heart bond, meaning Lyra had to give him part of her life force, making Lyra freeze as Vladimir weakly whispered, "No," refusing to take her life. Lyra cried that he was dying, but he insisted her human life force was too fragile and precious. She argued his was precious too, demanding how she could lose him again after everything, grabbing his collar as she whispered fiercely that she didn't forget him and never would. The forest fell silent except for the wind, until Eleanor urged her to act quickly if she meant to do it. Lyra placed both hands on Vladimir's chest, feeling not a heartbeat but faint energy like embers under snow, and she closed her eyes to remember the lake, his shadow watching over her, his hand catching hers, his voice whispering her name with centuries of longing, his smile when she remembered him, and she let the warmth inside her flow into him, opening a door in her soul as golden light spilled from her palms. Vladimir arched with a silent cry as Eleanor warned her she was giving too much, but Lyra refused to stop, tears streaming as she said he never gave up on her, and she wouldn't let him go.
The light intensified until Vladimir grabbed her wrists,
begging her to stop. But she pressed harder and golden light exploded like fireflies breaking free as his eyes flashed crimson again. His breathing steadied, his wounds sealed, and his porcelain glow returned. Lyra swayed and collapsed, but Vladimir caught her immediately, cradling her as he shouted for her to open her eyes. She whispered with a faint smile that he came back, and he held her close with a tremor in his voice as he said he always came back to her. Eleanor sobbed with relief, scolding them both, but Vladimir only pressed his forehead to whispering that she gave him life and he would spend the rest of his protecting hers. Lyra closed her eyes and leaned into him, and for the first time, the vampire's heart felt alive again. Snowflakes followed them as they returned to the vampire's castle. The ancient iron gates, laced with thorned vines, groaning open the moment Vladimir stepped near, as if the entire fortress sensed its master's return and the girl he carried in his arms. Lyra stirred faintly against his chest, insisting she could walk, but he tightened his hold with a soft yet unyielding no, telling her she had given him her strength, and he would carry her. Eleanor smiled tearfully as she pushed open the great wooden doors, promising to prepare the healing chamber immediately, and Vladimir stepped inside. As the dim, hushed castle came alive around them, torches flaring brighter, shadows moving gently, stone walls seeming too warm as if welcoming Lyra home. In his grand chamber draped in crimson and silver, he laid her gently on the bed, and she blinked up at him with tired eyes, whispering that he was staring. He knelt beside her, cupping her cheek with a trembling hand, admitting he nearly lost her, and she reminded him she nearly lost him too.
When he insisted she should have let him go because she gave him her life force, she countered softly
that he had given her 2 centuries of protection and they were even. But he murmured he owed her more. She brushed a curl from his forehead and whispered that he owed her nothing because she chose him. Her words struck him so deeply that he lowered his gaze,
then lifted her hand to press a trembling kiss to it, before whispering for her to rest, only for her to answer, "Then protect me."
Her steady eyes broke him. A century of restraint snapped as he leaned his forehead to hers, whispering that she didn't know how long he'd waited to hear that, and when she told him to stay, he did. Eleanor arrived with herbs and glowing vials to tend to Lyra, but Vladimir never left her side. holding her hand as Eleanor placed warm compresses against her chest, watching every breath, every flutter, every wince, prompting Lyra to tease that he was hovering.
He replied,
He'd stop only if she ordered him to.
And when she said she was too tired to order him, he declared he would continue hovering. Eleanor muttered through tears that she knew this day would come, that he never looked at another in 2 centuries, earning a glare before she scurried out, making Lyra's soft laugh warm him deeper than anything else. Eventually, Lyra fell asleep, her breathing steady, her body relaxing, and Vladimir watched her until he suddenly felt her memories pulsing faintly through their bond. Like a golden thread, flickers of her past flashed through him.
Lyra laughing by the lake, stealing buns from the orphanage kitchen, staring curiously at a moonlit figure who stayed out of reach.
And then standing at the forest's edge the night she disappeared, her scream swallowed by the shade and her childhood erased. Vladimir gripped the bed, fury and guilt storming through him as he whispered over her sleeping form that he should have saved her and would never forgive himself, brushing her hair gently as he promised nothing would ever take her again.
Morning came with sunlight through crimson curtains, warmth and calm, and Vladimir sitting nearby, watching her like he was memorizing her.
Lyra woke, stretching weakly, pointing out he hadn't slept, and he replied he didn't need to, but even if he did, he wouldn't have left her side.
When she sat up, he supported her instantly, and she smiled, saying she felt better, something he knew.
Because he could feel it through the bond, pulsing like 2 heartbeats in sync.
Lyra's breath caught as she asked what the bond meant, and
Vladimir knelt, taking her hands, whispering that their lives were intertwined now, not by accident, but because she chose to give him her life.
She whispered that he chose to wait for her.
And he leaned closer, eyes burning with centuries of love, whispering that he would never stop choosing her. Her heart pounded as she whispered she didn't want him to.
Silence,
stretching warm and breathtaking between them before he lifted her hands and kissed them slow.
Deliberate, a vow without words, and a promise without end.
The castle had not felt this alive in 2 centuries, and as Lyra rose from bed still weak, but no longer trembling, the chandeliers brightened on their own, flames dancing with unusual softness, corridors humming with faint whispers of ancient magic, even the marble floors warm under her feet, as if the entire fortress remembered her and welcomed her. Vladimir walked beside her, one hand gently hovering at her back, ready to catch her if she stumbled, staying close enough that she could feel the cold elegance of his presence, yet warm enough that her heart didn't fear it. "You're walking too fast," he murmured. "I'm walking normally," Lyra argued. "For someone who nearly collapsed the entire supernatural realm yesterday, perhaps," he replied dryly. Lyra laughed softly. "Are you always this dramatic?" "Only when someone drains half her life force into me," he said without blinking, and she flushed. The bond between them pulsed faintly warm gold for her, deep crimson for him. Every time her heart quickened, she felt a subtle answering pulse from his. Connected, intertwined, not a chain, not a burden, something older, something destined, something neither of them dared say aloud yet. They reached the upper library, her favorite room, despite not remembering why, and when the doors opened, a soft gust of warm air brushed her cheeks, books rustling as if greeting her. Eleanor was already there, sorting scrolls on a long table, and she turned when they entered, then froze completely. "Lyra!" She rushed over, gripping her shoulders like a frantic mother. "Let me look at you. Your color is back. Your aura isn't flickering anymore. Oh, thank the heavens." Lyra laughed. "I'm okay, Ellie." Eleanor blinked. "Ellie." Her eyes welled instantly. "You remember my nickname. Lyra's smile softened. Yes, I do. Eleanor hugged her fiercely, sniffling while Vladimir stood by, arms crossed, a faint smile touching the corner of his lips. When they finally sat at the long table, Eleanor spread out several ancient books, each covered in dust and thick leather bindings. Lyra frowned. What's all this? Vladimir's expression turned serious, sharper, darker. Your bloodline? He said quietly. Lyra stiffened. My bloodline? Eleanor nodded gently. You are not an ordinary human, Lyra. You never were. Lyra's breath caught. Vladimir picked up a book and opened it to an illustration, an elegant crest of intertwined moonlight and shadow. This, he said, is the sigil of the Luminae Order, an ancient lineage born with the ability to harness memory, light, and life force. Lyra stared. That's my family? Not just your family, Vladimir murmured. Your gift. Lyra touched the page slowly, feeling something stir deep within her like a soft echo, a whisper of familiarity. So that's why the shade took me? She asked. Vladimir's jaw tightened. Yes, because your existence is the one thing that can either destroy or heal the veil between realms. Lyra swallowed hard. That sounds dangerous. It is, Vladimir said simply. But why me? She whispered. Because your bloodline died out long ago, Eleanor explained softly. You are the last known descendant. Silence fell thick and heavy. Lyra felt her heartbeat quicken with something between fear and awe. Vladimir stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. You were never ordinary, he said gently. And I always knew that. She looked up at him, breath wavering. Did you know from the beginning? He hesitated. Yes, he admitted. But I didn't stay near you because of your gifts. His voice softened, further intimate, fragile. I stayed because you made me feel alive in a way no immortal creature should. Her heart tightened painfully. Eleanor sniffed in the background. I swear, if you two make me cry again. But she was already crying. Lyra smiled through her own emotions. Ellie? Vladimir cleared his throat and gestured to the books again. There is more, he said. Your powers are awakening now that your memories have returned. The bond between us has accelerated it. Lyra blinked. My powers awakened because I healed you. Partly, Vladimir said. But mostly because you remembered me. And yourself. Eleanor nodded eagerly. The Luminae's strongest abilities unlock through emotional truth. Through the heart. Lyra flushed. That sounds embarrassing. Vladimir smirked slightly. It suits you. She elbowed him lightly. He pretended not to feel it, but the fondness in his eyes betrayed him. Then Eleanor spread a parchment on the table, a map of realms. This, she said grimly, is the problem. Lyra peered closer. The map showed the mortal realm, the vampire dominion, and the realm of forgotten echoes, torn, fractured, bleeding at the edges, a dark crack pulsing through the center like a wound. Lyra felt cold. What is that? She whispered. Vladimir answered. The shade was not the only one hunting you. Its destruction awakened the rest of its kind. Lyra froze. There are more shades. Vladimir nodded. Yes, and now they know you survived. Eleanor shut the book sharply. And they will come for you. Soon. Lyra felt a tremor of fear run through her, but then Vladimir took her hand. She looked up. His expression was fierce, sharp, protective. As long as I exist, he said quietly, no shadow will touch you. Lyra squeezed his hand. And as long as I breathe, she whispered, you won't fight alone. Their bond pulsed a warm, golden crimson thread, alive, growing, strengthening. Eleanor looked between them and sighed dramatically. Oh, heavens, we're all doomed. They're in love. Lyra choked. Vladimir froze. Neither denied it, not really. Eleanor waved a hand. We need to train her. Strengthen the bond. Prepare for the next attack. Vladimir nodded. Yes, starting now. Lyra blinked. Now? His eyes glinted. Your powers are tied to your memories and your emotions. To unlock them, you must learn how to channel them. Lyra gulped. How? Vladimir stepped closer, so close she could feel the cool breath of immortality against her skin. He lifted her chin gently. By letting me in, he whispered, to every memory, every fear, every heartbeat. Lyra felt her breath catch. I don't know if I can. You can, he murmured. And I will be right here. His hand slid to her cheek, gentle, grounding. As long as you want me, he added softly. I am yours. Lyra's heart throbbed. I do want you, she whispered. More than I understand. Vladimir's eyes, soft in centuries of longing, melting into something new, something alive. Then we begin, he said, and the castle doors slammed shut behind them as if sealing a vow stronger than blood, stronger than fear, stronger than death. The training hall of the vampire castle was a place Lyra had never seen before. High ceilings arched like the ribs of a sleeping dragon. Windows made of enchanted dark glass filtering the moonlight into thin silver threads. Ancient runes glowing faintly along the floor, pulsing like a heartbeat. Lyra stood in the center of the room, fingers trembling slightly. Vladimir approached her slowly, the sound of his boots echoing against the stone. He wasn't wearing armor, only a simple black shirt that somehow felt more dangerous and more intimate. Eleanor stood at the edge of the hall, nervously wringing her hands. If anything explodes, I'll be right here. Lyra swallowed. Explodes. Vladimir raised one brow. It's a possibility. Eleanor nodded repeatedly. A very real one. Lyra glared at both. That's not comforting at all. Vladimir stepped closer until he stood inches from her, his presence cooling the air yet warming her pulse. It's not meant to comfort, he murmured. It's meant to prepare you. Lyra clenched her fists. Okay, what do I do first? A faint smile touched his lips. First, he whispered, raising his hand and placing 2 fingers gently over her heart. You breathe. The moment he touched her, the bond pulsed. Her chest warmed, her heartbeat stumbled. She inhaled, but the breath shook. Vladimir leaned close, voice brushing her ear like velvet. Calm your mind. Let go of fear. I'm not afraid, she whispered. His lips curved. You are, she glared, but couldn't deny it. Vladimir pulled back slightly. Lyra, listen carefully. His hand moved from her chest to her cheek, thumb brushing her skin. Your power isn't summoned by force. It is summoned by truth. Truth? She echoed. Yes, his voice deepened, soft but unyielding. Your memories. Your emotions. Your heart. Her heart pounded so loudly she wondered if vampires could hear it. He stepped back a bit, giving her space. Close your eyes. Lyra obeyed. Now, Vladimir said quietly, think of the moment your memories returned. What did you feel? Lyra inhaled softly. I felt warmth, she whispered. A pull, like something was calling me back. Who was calling? He asked gently. Lyra's breath hitched. You. The bond pulsed crimson through gold. A faint flush crossed Vladimir's expression. Good, he said. Now focus on that feeling. Let it rise. Lyra tried, but her heart raced too fast. Eleanor cleared her throat. Lord Vladimir, maybe she needs a different memory. No, he said firmly. This bond is her anchor. Lyra took another breath. She pictured the lake from her childhood moonlit, quiet, beautiful. She pictured him standing there, watching over her, protecting her, loving her long before she understood it. Her chest warmed, then burned, then glowed. Light gathered around her fingers like golden sparks. Eleanor gasped. She's doing it. Lyra opened her eyes, and the entire hall lit with soft gold. But the moment she saw the glowing light, fear jolted through her. I can't control it. The gold flickered wildly, crackling like unstable fire. Vladimir stepped toward her instantly. Lyra, look at me. But the light surged. Lyra's heartbeat spiked. I can't, Vladimir, I'm scared. The golden light lashed outward, a shock wave blasting across the hall. Eleanor screamed and ducked behind a pillar. Vladimir stood his ground. The light hit him, and instead of repelling or harming him, the crimson energy of his aura flared, absorbing the blow. He didn't move, didn't even blink. When the shock faded, he walked straight to her, grabbing her trembling hands. "Enough," he whispered. "But I could hurt you. You can't." "I just did." "Lyra," he murmured, leaning his forehead against hers, "you could burn down this entire castle, and I would still walk into the fire if it meant reaching you." Her breath caught. His voice dropped, deeper, softer, dangerous in its tenderness. "I am not afraid of your power," he whispered. "I'm afraid of losing you again." Lyra's heart broke open, and suddenly light burst from her chest, brilliant and warm. Not wild, not chaotic, beautiful. Vladimir cupped her face with both hands, steadying her. "Good," he whispered. "You're controlling it." Lyra blinked at him through shimmering tears. "I don't know how." "You're listening to your heart," he murmured. "And it knows me." The glow stabilized soft waves of gold dancing around her like living petals of light. Eleanor peeked from behind her pillar. "Oh, thank goodness she didn't blow a hole in the roof." Lyra laughed breathlessly. Vladimir smiled faintly. "You're stronger than you think?" Lyra wiped her eyes. "I didn't do this alone." "No," he agreed. "You didn't? The bond amplifies us both." His gaze softened. "And it will only continue to grow." Lyra swallowed. "What does that mean?" Vladimir stepped closer, his voice suddenly quieter. "It means your power will keep evolving, and so will our connection emotionally, magically, and otherwise." Her heart thudded. "Otherwise?" She whispered. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "If you choose it," Lyra's breath trembled. "I do." Vladimir's hand paused. His crimson eyes glowed not with hunger, not with danger, but with emotion he had held for centuries. Then slowly he leaned in, not a kiss, not yet, but close, so close she felt every breath he took. "Lyra," he whispered, "you have no idea what you do to me." Her heartbeat echoed through the bond like a drum. "I think," she whispered, trembling, "I'm starting to understand." Just then, the torches violently flickered. Every window shattered inward. A cold wind swept the hall. Eleanor screamed, "Shadows!" Vladimir spun instantly, pulling Lyra behind him. From the cracks of darkness crawling along the walls, dozens of shade fragments slithered into the room, their whispering voices hissing one word, "Lumine." Lyra's blood ran cold. Vladimir bared his fangs, eyes blazing crimson. "They found you." Lyra grabbed his arm. "Then let them come." Her hands glowed with a steady gold. Vladimir glanced back at her, a slow, fierce smile curving his lips. "Then we fight together."